Okay, so in this sublesson, we are going to define and discuss three types of DAX expressions, those being calculated columns, measures, and calculated tables. And we'll go ahead and demo the creation of columns, measures, and a calculated table as well. So let's just talk briefly about what a calculated column is. So a calculated column by definition is calculated on a row by row basis. When we go ahead and create a calculated column, which we'll do in our demos, you'll see that it creates a brand new physical column in the table in which we're creating the column. It does take up space in the data model, so it's just something you need to be aware of, and its value is calculated at data load time. Typically, a calculated column resides in a dimension table to be used as labels on a report and/or a slicer. And as you may notice as we go through calculated columns, they can often be pushed into the Power Query engine. At the very bottom of the screen there, you're going to see a calculated column called line total sales, which is the unit price from the sales table multiplied by the order quantity from the sales table. Now, just a reminder, inside our data model, we have a column called line total sales PQ. Now, that is equivalent to the last bullet point there where we can push that logic into the Power Query engine. So we purposely did that back in Power Query so we can show you that the same can be done back there as can be done out in the calculated column. Now, in more advanced uses of data modeling, it's actually preferable to push that logic back into the Power Query engine. But for now, we're going to focus on calculated columns and show you how to go ahead and create those. Okay, so just a little bit about measures. So a measure is an aggregate of a column. It does not take up space in the data model, and its value is calculated at runtime. So what do those two bullet points there mean? So when you initially create a measure and hit enter, you're going to notice that nothing happens because you're just storing a query. That query will have a value when you go to use it at runtime on a report, and it's able to take advantage of context, which we're going to talk about in a subsequent sublesson, to go ahead and calculate its value. Typically, measures reside in fact tables, although technically they belong to the data model itself, which means a few things. Measure names have to be unique across the entire database. So down below, we have a measure called total sales, which is just the sum of the line total sales. And we can only have one measure across our entire data model that is called total sales. And we could actually move that total sales measure to any one of the tables in our model that we want, and the calculation of its value will not be affected. And this is referred to as the home table. Okay, so now let's talk about calculated tables. Most of the time, you create tables by importing data into your model from an external data source. But calculated tables let you add new tables based on data you've already loaded into the model. So instead of querying and loading values into your new tables columns from a data source, you create a data analysis expression formula to define the table's values. So down below, we have an example where we're creating a brand new table called sales. And what we're going to do here is union the United States sales table and the other countries' sales table together. So what we're going to do in our demo is we're going to go ahead and bring those two queries from the Power Query editor and deliver them to the data model and show you how we can actually create the sales table at the DAX level using a calculated table by unioning those two tables together. Okay, so let's go ahead and move ourselves into our Power BI desktop file that's going to support the sublessons examples. Okay, so we've got our lesson 3 sublesson 8 file right here. So I'm just going to double click on it and get that desktop file open. We'll just go ahead and wait a moment. Okay, so we have our desktop file open. What we're going to do here now is go to the data view. So this is where we're going to go ahead and write our DAX expressions. Now we can write DAX expressions on the report view, but we're just going to do them down in the data view at this point in time so we can watch our calculated columns get created. So what we're going to do here is I'm just going to open up the fields pane here first, and we're going to go into our sales table right here. And we can already see that we have the line total sales from Power Query, which we did back in the Power Query editor. Now what we're going to do here is go and add a new calculated column called line total sales. So what we're going to do here is hover over top of the sales table here, and we're going to right click and say new column. When we say new column, we're going to see the formula bar at the top here appear, and I'm just going to make this a little bit larger so we can see what's happening here. And here's where we can then go ahead and build our calculated column expression. So the first thing that we're going to have to do is get rid of this column equals. Now the reason that Power BI puts this column equals in place here is just a reminder to you that when you right click, you're actually asking it to create a calculated column. We're going to go ahead and get rid of that and define our line total sales like so. So what we're going to do is type in line total sales, and we're going to say it is equal to sales, and we'll go ahead and choose the order quantity, and we're going to multiply it by sales unit price. So you'll notice here, before I actually go and finish this off, that IntelliSense is kicked in. And this is very handy. It helps us actually type our expressions out, and it also signals to you what are valid constructs while we're actually going ahead and typing this. So one thing that I've learned over the years is if the IntelliSense is not letting you choose something you think should be chosen, that means that you're likely doing something wrong. IntelliSense is actually pretty smart here. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and say sales unit price, and there is my calculated column expression. So I have line total sales equals order quantity times unit price, both from the sales table. The sales table is the current table because that's what we're currently working on. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter there. And we'll notice momentarily here that a brand new column is going to get created here called line total sales. And we're going to see that on a row by row basis, the calculation was made to go from order quantity times unit price to give this value here, and then it moved down to the next row. Now it's just pure coincidence the way the data is ordered in this table that 1497 is repeating itself over and over again. If we take a look here in this dropdown, we're going to see that there's many more values that were calculated. We just happen to be seeing the same value repeating at the very top of the table. And so what we're going to do here in our next sub-lesson, we're going to talk about context. And the way this calculated column was calculated was by going through each one of the rows, row by row, and performing the math, and then moving down to the next row. And it went through those 60,398 rows that are in this table instantaneously. So I was able to go through and do that. So we're going to talk about this when we refer to the row context in the next sub-lesson. Okay, so next what we're going to do is create a measure. So once again, on the sales table, I'm going to right-click and say new measure. Go like that. And we're going to see here in the formula bar that momentarily it's going to say measure equals. Once again, Power BI is signaling to you that you're actually asking it to create a measure. It's going to be your job to go ahead and get rid of this measure like so. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And then we're going to go ahead and type our syntax in. In this case, we're going to type a measure and create one called total sales like so. And we're going to make it equal to the sum, similar to the Excel function, of the sales line total sales. And we can choose the line total sales that we created as a calculated column or the one that we did back in Power Query. I'm going to go ahead and use the one that we created just momentarily as a calculated column. Once again, go ahead and close that bracket off. This time we're going to hit enter and we're going to notice something different happens. When we actually went and created that, we can see down below here in our fields pane that a new measure was created in the actual table itself. So I just zoom in here. We can see that it has a little calculator next to it. It's called total sales. That was created. But if we go back out here and actually take a look in the table, nothing was created. And a lot of times when people are getting used to DAX and they go ahead and create a measure, they're expecting to see something over here on the table. But that's not the case. Because keep in mind, all we've done so far is we created a stored calculation, and this value will be calculated when we actually go to use it on a report. So let's just quickly show you what that would look like. So I'm just going to go to the report view really quick. And what we're going to do is just build our first very basic report. I'm going to take this total sales out of my sales table, and I'm going to drag it and just simply drop it onto the canvas. So we're going to wait a moment here, and we're going to see that a visualization was created. And it is just a bar chart, or sorry, a clustered column chart. So what I'm going to do here next is actually just go ahead, I'm going to turn this into a table matrix. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And we can see we have a total sales value here. So I'm just going to go ahead and make that a little bigger so we can see it, because we're going to use this example a few more times over the next little bit as we actually walk through the rest of our DAX expressions and talk about the context. So I'm just going to go ahead and make that a little bigger. So what I've done here is I've made my header bigger, my values bigger, and the total if I had one larger as well. The way that I did that was I made sure my visualization was highlighted. We're going to do lots of this in the next lesson, but I want to at least show you how we do this now. Is I went in here and I went to the format right here. I went down to the column headers card like so, and I chose the text size of 18 to make our column headers larger. I went to the same thing in values and made that 18 as well so that we can read the values in a little bit easier. And I did the same thing on totals as well. Should we actually go ahead and start displaying totals as we start putting more onto this visualization. So right now, this measure is being calculated within this visualization. It shows $161 million and change there. So one of the really nice things about measures here is I'm actually going to go ahead and add a little bit more context to this. So I'm going to go into my order date hierarchy, and I'm going to grab the order date year here and go back over to my fields bucket. And we'll explain all these things once again in the visualization section. For now, I'm just using these visuals to explain measures. And I'm going to take my order date year and drop it into this visual right here. Okay, so let's try that again. I'm going to drag my order date year and put it above total sales there. And there we go. So now I'm starting to see these values come out. So I'm just going to reposition this visual and make it larger because we're going to use this one quite a bit the next little bit. And we can see that now our total sales measure on a intersection by intersection basis has been recalculated to say I want to see the line total sales for 2017. I want to see the line total sales for 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, and then the grand total here. So this is one of the beauties of the measures, is that they are calculated at runtime and they have an incredible amount of flexibility and allow you to do all kinds of different things with them based on the context that you're throwing their way. And in particular, that context is what is referred to as the filter context, which we're going to introduce to you in the next sublesson. Okay, so the last thing we're going to do here is we are going to create a calculated table. So the way I'm going to do it in this data model here is I'm just going to go ahead and close these tables up here. I'm going to actually save my work as it stands right now. I'm going to work my way back into the Power Creator because I actually want to show you bringing these tables through from Power Creator and actually unioning them together using the DAX expression to create a brand new table. So once again, I'm going to go back into the Power Creator by clicking Transform Data. And here I promised you we'd never go back in the Power Creator. And now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to ask that we deliver United States sales and other country sales over into the data model itself. So how do we do that? We just right click on both those. I guess we should do it one at a time. Right click on it and say enable load. So let's enable both of these to be moved over into the data model. Click on that, click on that. And what I'll do now is go to the top here and click close and apply. So I'm going to take those two tables that were just staging tables a moment ago and push them over into the actual data model itself. So I can show you creating these as a calculated table over in the data model itself. So let's just go ahead and let those two tables come through. And we can see now that we've got other country sales and United States sales. So I'm going to go ahead and create a table here. And now what we're going to do is go to the top here where it says Table Tools, and we're going to click on this command over here under Calculations and call it New Table. So what we're going to get here now is a expression that says table, just signaling once again that we're creating a table here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to call this Sales DAX, just to signify that this expression is creating a table called sales, but it's being created from DAX. And the reason I'm doing that is we already have a table in the data model called sales, and keeping in mind we can't have two tables in the data model with the exact same name. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the union clause, and then I'm going to go ahead and choose United States sales, once again taking advantage of IntelliSense here, and I want to go ahead and concatenate that with other country sales. So as soon as I start typing commands in there, we'll see that the tables start coming up. I can go ahead and hit enter, like so, and we'll see momentarily we're going to get a brand new calculated table here called Sales DAX that is equivalent to the sales table, except we did it using a DAX expression. Now it's kind of hard to see here, so I'm just going to zoom in, and we're going to see that this is actually a slightly different colored matrix here. It's kind of hard to see on the screen. Once you get it set up on yours, it has a blue in there, and that's actually indicating that this is a calculated table. All right, so I'll go ahead and zoom myself back out. All right, so just to recap what we did in the sublesson here, we created a calculated column, we created a measure, and then we went through and created a calculated table. So an example of each one of the three DAX expressions. Okay, so in our next sublesson, we're going to go in and talk about context so we can understand how the different contexts affect our DAX expressions.